For someone with a solo podcast, I have a lot of opinions on podcast guests. One of them being that the right guest is going to make you a lot more money than most sponsorships or advertisers ever will. I produce several interview-style podcasts, and there's one thing that I know for sure. Nothing creates the opportunity for networking and building connections quite like hosting interviews on your own podcast. Just being the producer in the room, I've watched hundreds of professional and personal connections form during recordings. Connections and relationships that have gone on to make a lot of money. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to create a valuable connection with your guest, how to turn that one-time collaboration into an ongoing partnership, and what it takes to position your podcast as a coveted marketing and outreach opportunity. Hello and welcome to Podcast for Profit. My name is Morgan Franklin. I'm a podcast producer, strategist, and educator. This podcast will help you create and grow a podcast that cuts through the noise of social media and speaks directly to your target audience. If you're ready to create a podcast that will align you with the experts in your industry, position yourself as a trusted leader, and create another source of revenue for your business, you're in the right place. Do you want to know the secret to making a valuable connection? It's being a valuable connection. And I know that sounds like the inside of a fortune cookie, but in the past 10 years, I've started 2 multi-six-figure businesses. And you want to know how I did it? You want to know how I get almost every client I pursue or that shows interest in me? I give them my time. I give them my knowledge. I give them my attention. And most importantly, I give them the most valuable information I can every single time. Have you ever heard that phrase, it takes a friend to be a friend? That's one of my favorite sayings. And I think about it all the time because it has so many different meanings. Yes, you have to be a friend to have a friend, but you also have to give if you want to be given to. You have to show your commitment to get commitment. You have to make an investment to be invested in. That's why I give myself so fully at every opportunity I have. If I'm taking the time to do something, I'm going to put all my cards on the table. I'm going to do everything that I can. And when you host someone on your podcast, you want to be the most valuable, attentive, investing person that you can be. You want to show this person that you are grateful to have them, and that not only that, but you want to help them. This is where I think so many podcasters and people overall are just kind of getting it wrong. They get an incredible guest, maybe even someone they'd love to work with, and you start rubbing your hands together like a fly at a barbecue, and you lose sight of the mission because your energy changes from being so grateful and excited to have this person on your podcast to, what can I get out of this? How can I close this deal? How can I make sure that I'm getting the most out of this person's audience? And people can sense that. And let's just say that you did just invite someone on your podcast with the intention of doing business with them in the future. That is so exciting, right? Like, this is a new opportunity for you, but you have to stay calm. We have to stay in that energy of true abundance and not wanting or needing anything. So if you do want to work with this person, you are not following up with information about your product or your business or your mastermind and trying to sell them. You are following up with maybe a free audit from your team or saying, hey, I just launched this product. I would love to send it out to you if it would help you. Or, hey, I've got 2 tickets to a gala next weekend and I would love to host you. It was great to meet you. You are moving in the energy of, I have everything I could ever want and need, but we're friends now and I sincerely want to help you out. That is the energy I'm trying to bring. You know that meme that's like, the energy that I bring to the function? That's me. That's the energy I want to bring to the function. Thank you for investing in me and my podcast with your time and your effort. Now, how can I invest in you? That alone will change the game for you. That will change the relationship you have with your guests. Now, will every guest become a client? No, of course not. But you don't need every guest to become a client. You don't want every guest to become a client. Plant the seeds of goodwill, and I promise abundance will grow. Some of the best clients I have and the most treasured professional relationships I've made in the past decade have been from meeting someone at the studio, recording a podcast, and doing something for free for them, trying to give them some value, giving them my best, and really not expecting anything in return from them. And just think about this for a minute. When you give someone an incredible experience for free, what do you think they'll expect from you when they're actually paying money? Just think about that. And next time that you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to do this, I don't want to do this, but you're faced with a really incredible opportunity, or the door is slightly open and you think, wow, I could do something for this person. Think about that. Think about, what will this person think I would give them if they were paying when I gave this to them for free? Now, all this is great, and I know that we just can't wait to work for free for people, but let's talk about how we're going to get this amazing guest and future client to come on the show. Because if you're shooting high, and I hope you are, you might feel kind of intimidated to invite someone on your show that you'd actually want to work with. And honestly, some of the best advice I've ever gotten in business is, if you're sending out a pitch to somebody and you don't feel a little bit anxious to press send, you probably aren't aiming high enough. So the first thing is, you need to have an exact reason why you want them to come on your show. How is it going to benefit them and your audience? People want to be flattered, of course, but they also want to know why they're the person for the job, so to speak. I condense this down into what your podcast is about, why you want them, and what you think the audience will gain from them coming on the show. Like I said, a little bit of flattery, a little bit of telling them why you think they are the best person to do this, and also why you want them specifically. Turning a guest into a client really starts with that first interaction. It's how you approach them. Are you being professional? Are you being concise? Are you attaching a media kit of your podcast with its previous guests and accomplishments? Are you telling them, I have these exact recording dates and times? Are you offering to do a pre-interview with them to get to know them a little bit more and try to find out some things that they haven't talked about on other podcasts? And by the way, if you still need a media kit or you want to refresh the one that you have, I have the perfect Canva template linked for you in the episode description. You have to think about these interactions and how you're addressing the guest. How quickly are you replying back to their messages? Are you engaging with them? Are you showing them the attention that you should from start to finish? Because I think a good guest experience, a guest experience that will result in a valuable connection, is a thoughtful invitation with information about the podcast, a pre-interview, customized questions, a follow-up with details about the recording and asking if they want to change any of the questions, a well-managed recording and meeting, and finally, just following up with the links to their podcast. Let them know how they can listen to their podcast, and also some promotional materials for them to share the episode. Like, that is really the least that we can do. And I want to go back for just a minute to talking about the actual meeting and the podcast recording. Most of the time, this is where the magic happens. This is where you're going to make or break this deal. First, if it's a virtual meeting, get on 15 minutes early and make sure you've read through the questions at least once. And if it's an in-person, get there, I'd say an hour early. Make sure all your equipment is set up properly. You know everything that you need. And again, that you've read through your questions at least once. When the guest comes in, take a few minutes to chit-chat, get to know them, ask them about their day, talk to them about the podcast recording. In my mind as a producer, there is nothing worse than just having to go straight into the recording. So make sure you're giving your guest that time. Most people aren't going on the late night circuit, okay? They're gonna be nervous, or at least they're gonna feel a little tense. So take some time to talk with them. Let them know how much you edit the show, if you edit the show, and what they can expect throughout this recording. Clarity is kindness. And finally, when it's over, no matter what, and I mean this, if you don't hear anything else from this whole episode, listen to this. Compliment them on what an incredible job they did at the end of that podcast. Maybe they stumbled through the whole thing and they could hardly put a sentence together. I don't care. Take a minute and let them know that they did an amazing job and you appreciate them for coming in and recording with you today. That is the absolute bare minimum that we can do for our guests. After that, depending on how much time you have, you can chat or let them know when the episode is going to be coming out if you have any idea. And then also that you'll follow up with some links so that they can listen to it and share it. Sometimes I also like to ask a guest, like, if they have any connections or know anybody that they'd recommend to come on the show. Usually great guests have great people in their network as well that would be a great guest for your show. So don't let them run off without asking, like, hey, do you have anyone else that you think would be good for the show? But don't just sign off or hurry them off. Make sure that from the beginning to the end of this recording experience, they feel special and that they feel valuable and that they know that you appreciate them taking their time and effort to come on your podcast. Because honestly, that's a really big deal. And most of the time, they're not getting paid. They're not getting anything for it. So let them know, hey, I appreciate you. And then, of course, when you're sending out the links and your podcast episode has been released, start planting those seeds. Like I said, give from your heart. Let them know, hey, I am here to help you. Let me know if you need anything. Hey, I have this product I'd like you to try. Or, hey, would you like us to do an audit for you? If they like you, this is going to all happen so easily and naturally. You guys know it's just like making a friend. It's any kind of connection that you have. This is the exact same thing. But if it feels forced or unwelcome, I'd honestly just let it go. I'd probably just send the links to the podcast. And sometimes you just don't click with people. You know, you're not going to click with every single guest that you have. And that is okay. So don't push it. I would make this customized to each person because it just takes a second. But you will know when you have made a connection through your podcast that is going to be a long time connection. One other thing, personally, I like to send a handwritten card after I have someone on one of my podcasts. Normally, I'm doing batch recordings, so I'll be in the studio recording 3 to 5 interviews back to back. And when I get home that night, I'll go ahead and write the thank you card so it's fresh on my mind. And I can actually remember something about that person in the interview because, as you know, when you're doing 4 to 8 interviews per month per podcast, it's easy to forget the details of each guest and each recording. So after you've had a day where you did batch recording, if you do it that way, just go ahead, find their addresses, write your thank you notes. And honestly, sometimes I wait until their episode airs to send the message just because I want to have that one last touch point with them. They say on average it takes 12 interactions with your average customer to make a sale. So if you knock out 6 of those 12 with your future client during the podcast interview process, I think that you've done a great job. I know you've heard that saying, your network is your net worth. And yes, it's cliche, but you hear it so much because it's true. And this is where the real money making in podcasting happens. We're meeting a guest, we're hitting it off with them, we're talking about what we do, and they say, wow, I was just talking with a colleague or with someone at a conference or with my wife about this, and we need you. And it really is that easy. There's not really a reason to get hard selling involved. It's just educating and representing yourself to the right audience, like always. And when you think about it, if you have an industry-specific podcast, this is the perfect place to do it. I know that I've talked about this before, but one of my podcasts is about long-term care and how to pay for senior care in the United States. Through this podcast, my host, who runs a long-term care agency, has been able to make connections and talk to people all over the United States that has connected him with more people to get funding, to find clients, to meet politicians making policies about his industry. It is insane. And that's the power of having a podcast that's targeted correctly to your objectives and working in tandem with your brand and your marketing and your outreach. Now, before we wrap it up, let's work on making a few goals together because we can talk about networking and creating relationships with our guests and how we're just going to make stacks of cash from this podcast. But if we don't have goals, we are never going to get there. So the first thing that I want you to do is find 5 guests that are in your industry or niche that you would love to have on your podcast. Now, these should be kind of unattainable. They should be the kind of people that you would be starstruck if they came on your show. I want you to find their email or find their team's email, reach out to them, pitch them, and just see what happens. You know this is a big ask, but I promise you, crazier things happen every day. I want you to just pitch 5 people who you would absolutely love to come on your show, but they're kind of a pie in the sky guest. Next, I want you to research 5 guests that could lead to a business opportunity for you. Send those people a pitch. Ask them to come on your show. Do your research. Find people that really could work for you and your business, not just somebody that you know, not just the first person that popped up. Do some real research to say, okay, these are 5 people who I would really like to be connected with professionally. And then for all 10 of these guests, I want you to have another list that's a plan of action for when they say yes. This should include at least one way you plan to bring value to them or their business through the recording process. So everything that we talked about. One topic that you can explore that would be new information to their audience. So maybe something that they don't talk about all the time, or something new, or something that you find interesting that they haven't already talked about on every single podcast. And then finally, how you plan to nurture this guest experience from the moment they respond to sending that thank you note. Having the right guests on your podcast is going to help you build a community and network that is unmatched by any other social media or in-person networking strategies. Because you're not only building a relationship with this guest, you're building a relationship with their audience and reinforcing the relationship with your own. This is how you succeed in podcasting, and it's how you succeed in business. Just remember, we're all looking for community. We're all looking for where we fit in and where we can make a difference. So be the one to take the first step. Be the one that reaches out. Be the one that gives without expecting anything in return. Plant those seeds. And as always, I can't wait to listen to your podcast. Hey, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. If you enjoyed the podcast and you'd like to hear more episodes like this one, go ahead and subscribe to the show. New episodes air every Monday morning. And if you found this episode valuable and you want to help other business owners and podcasters, will you leave me a 5-star review? It helps the show rank higher in the charts and brings more entrepreneurs the information they need to start making money on their podcast.